Today is May 20th. Oh my God, May 20th. How many more days before graduation? Who's counting? Somebody tell me. No, quick.
14.
No math majors in here. Okay. No math majors. Well, begins May 20th. This is the Upper Dublin School District legislative meeting for May. I would like to call the meeting to order. We will begin, we will have our captains of our boys swim team, Zach and Cornell, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everybody please stand? Thank you, guys. Thank you. So tonight is a very, very special night. I look at this program, and I'm so excited to see teams I've never seen here before. Not really. I'm so excited to see our girls swimming team back, boys swimming, girls basketball, which had an incredible run. I still think we should have won that game. You know, it was so disappointing, but an amazing season, and it's only going to get better next year, right, Coach? Next year, boys lacrosse, I'm happy to see them here again, and girls track. Okay, we will begin with a roll call. Ms. Evans.
Mrs. Francis. Here. Mrs. Good. Here. Dr. Kim. Here. Dr. Ludwig. Here. Mr. Roski. Here. Mrs. Rothman. Here. Mrs. Sherbier. Here. Mr. Sirota. Here. Dr. Levin.
Here. Okay, so getting back to the festivities tonight, I look at this program, and I don't think we can get a font smaller than this to summarize all of you that are out there tonight to be recognized. And we are very, very proud of all the young men and women here, and we are especially proud of the parents that are here tonight that made the decision to sign you up, to move into Upper Dublin and join the Upper Dublin family. So we will move on into the agenda. Dan Kaplan, Student Government Association report. Dan is not here tonight, so we will move right to the presentation, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Yanni.
Good evening, Dr. Levinowitz and everyone. I want to say kudos and congratulations to all of our students for athletic and scholarly activities over the last couple of weeks. I hope that everyone has had a chance to attend one of our concerts or other fine arts events, as well as many of our athletic competitions. As a district, we want to remind everyone that we are recommitting ourselves to equity. The concept of educational equity requires that each student receives what they need to succeed. Over the next couple of days, we will be sharing more information about how we will deepen our commitment to equity across the district starting in the new year. In my previous reports, I shared with the board and the community that there was pending legislation around cyber school funding in the state. It does not appear that any of that funding, any changes to funding will come. But one of the things that we must do as a community is continue to advocate on behalf of public education. We are just about to go out to bid with our Sandy Run Middle School project. On our website, there will be a timeline of events of when we will go out to bid and when the board hopefully will accept bids for that project. A big congratulations to Ryan Goodman and Hannah Zhao for being Upper Dublin Medal winners. They were honored last Wednesday night. A big thank you to all the community members who participated and provided feedback and input into our strategic action planning process. Please remember to check out our district calendar and stay tuned for all of the upcoming activities through the rest of May and into June. Thank you.
I believe I am now going to turn this over to our very special principal, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. Good evening, and thank you all families, school board members, administrators, and everyone in attendance for the occasion we have tonight to give tribute to the excellence of our students. The next couple of weeks provide a number of opportunities to recognize some of Upper Dublin's finest in the areas of academics, scholarship, service, citizenship, and activities. It is inspiring to see so many of our young women and so many of our young men honored at these various events. Tonight, we are giving recognition to our student athletes and our coaches for bringing us Cardinal pride by winning Suburban 1 League titles. Before we get into that, it is typical on this evening that we present the prudential spirit of community award. Unfortunately, this year's recipient, Sophie Schneider, is currently competing for Upper Dublin at the State Science Fair in Penn State and is thus unable to attend. So, I hope this isn't weird, but despite her absence, would you please join me in congratulating Sophie for being one of the top student volunteers. She will receive a certificate of commendation and congratulatory letter from the president. At this time, I'm going to turn the program over to our tireless athletic director, Mr. Griner. There are 5 teams being recognized from the winter and spring sports seasons. The coaches will make their remarks, and students, when your names are called, we would ask you to come forward to receive your medals, and then proceed to my right to be congratulated by members of the school board and by our administration. I thank you all in advance for your exemplary efforts on behalf of Upper Dublin High School, the Upper Dublin High School community, and I would ask at this time that you would please welcome the Master of Ceremonies for tonight, Mr. Griner.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to recognize our Suburban 1 League American Conference champions. Tonight we'd like to acknowledge 3 of our winter sports teams and 2 of our spring teams for bringing a total of 8 conference championships for the school year. This success isn't possible without the hard work and commitment and sacrifices that our coaches and student athletes make in an attempt to produce a championship season. As a result, I'd like to start off this evening by applauding all of our team's efforts this past winter and spring seasons. The first team that we'd like to recognize has been attending this meeting for 30 consecutive years. Is our girls swimming and diving team. To share more about the performance this season is head coach Pat Reddick.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to Dr. Rabinowitz, our #1 fan, and the school board, Dr. Yanni, the administration of the high school, in particular the 2 gentlemen behind me, Mr. Schultz and Mr. Briner, for the support for our program. We'd also like to thank Mrs. Alice Rasmussen, the athletic department secretary, and to Ms. Katie Bartosik, our athletic trainer. Also to all of our swimming and diving parents, especially our outgoing Booster Club presidents, Bethany Duthie and Mike Braun. To my fellow coaches, Chris, CJ, and Jeff and Brandon, thank you as well. We'd also like to congratulate our boys swimming team for winning again this year. And congratulations to the teams that are here tonight, the girls basketball, boys lacrosse, and girls track and field teams for their Suburban 1 championships. We are honored tonight to be here, to be recognized for being Suburban 1 American Conference champions. And this season was a true milestone, as our victory marked the 30th championship in a row for the UD swimming. By other measures, this was a highly successful season, including team runner-up at District 1 and state championships, as well as 4 gold medal performances at the PIAA championships at the end of the season. But the big measure of success for me is how these 38 young ladies commit themselves wholeheartedly to the grueling training regime this sport demands, and to upholding the unforgiving high standards of our team and all the teams that have gone before. Swimming in our program's legacy are tough taskmasters, but these young ladies embrace the concepts of hard work by getting out of bed 4 mornings a week in the dead of winter for 5:30 a.m. practices, and then returning for 2.5 hours in the afternoon and thousands of yards. And they do it consistently and without complaint. They regularly and eagerly compete against the top teams in the state, and they swim to win, knowing that to be the best, they must swim against the best. And that dedication leads to a group expectation of excellence. Personal excellence that equates to team excellence. And all that leads to a tradition of excellence. A tradition each one of these 38 swimming and diving sisters defend with their full heart and soul.
A tradition that produced 30 titles in a row. I am always proud and excited to call these young ladies my team, and I look forward to next season and a chance to continue the tradition of excellence that is Upward Elm Swimming. So now let me introduce them, starting with my freshmen. Erin Andrews, Lexi Brown. You guys are going to hold the head applause. No, Erin, come on up. Erin, you're just going to have to hold her applause for you. Give her a little time. Lexi Brown, Michaela Caldwell, Carrie Chakri, Caitlin Darcy, Megan DiMartino, Joyce Jung, Eliane Heidorf, Amanda Kulik, Shay Ludwig, Anna Luciani, Grace McManus, Mayla Marina, Kayla Mostella, Karina Pesty, Erica Stelling, Tatiana Wills, our sophomores, Alana Sandra Loomis, Molly Braun, Michaela DeMichael, Maureen Fagan, Janet Hurslauer, and Nicole Lippo. Our juniors, Ellie Braun, Grace Brennan, Allie Breslin, Sammy Cosio, Clary Lockstead, Juliet Lodewick, and Laura Pendleton. And the strong leadership of our seniors, Tina Hay, Cindy Jones, Najee Nicholson, Anna Kate Powell, Allie Stelling, and our tri-captains, Addie Andor, Liz Medvedev, and Leah Wilman. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2018-19 UD Girls Swimming Ball.
Please ask the team captains to get Abby Amdor, Elizabeth Litt, and Leah Wilman, and Cindy Jones, please come back up front. On behalf of the Spur One League, for a 30th year in a row, I'd like to present to you the American Conference Championship Trophy, and in addition, the PIAA State Runner-Up Trophy. Congratulations. If I could get Coach Rankin. On behalf of the school board and the athletic department, I'd like to present to you this plaque to commemorate the championship season. Congratulations on all your success this season. I thank you for your dedication and commitment that you've given to our girls' swimming and diving program.
The next meet has been attending this meeting for 24 consecutive years. It's our boys swimming and diving team. Here to talk more about the performances of the season is head coach Jeff Shiner. Everyone. Thank you very much to the school board for having us here today and for your support for all of our programs here at Upper Dublin and all the work that you do behind the scenes for the entire school district. Thank you to our administration, particularly Mr. Dreyer and Mr. Schultz behind me here. Thank you to Mrs. Rasmussen, who keeps me in line, which is not an easy task. Thank you, Ms. B, for keeping us healthy, and thank you to all of our swim team parents. Thank you to everybody for helping be the village that raises these children, which is extremely important because I am mostly useless, so thank God for all of you people. That being said, in the years that I've been a coach here in Upper Dublin, I've seen some traditions come and go, but success at this level seems to be one that sticks with us, which is great to see. With the Suburban One competition in swimming, there's kind of two parts to it. There's the league, and then we actually have a separate Suburban One championship meet. And they are two different things that are connected, but you can win our league, but lose the meet, or vice versa. So a couple of years ago, we actually found ourselves in that position. We won the league, we won the Suburban One league, but we lost the Suburban One championship meet to a very good Hatboro team, which was an interesting position to be in. But, as they say about life, it's not about what happens to you, it's how you react to it. Additionally, an interesting thing about that meet is that it is the final time each season when our entire team is competing together. From that point on, you either qualify for districts and states or not. So Suburban is sort of our last hurrah. It's really an end point to our season in a lot of ways. For those two factors, what happened to us 2 years ago, and because of what that meet represents, I felt there's been sort of a sea change in our approach to that meet the last couple of years. I think the boys who were on the team a couple of years ago really reacted strongly to losing that meet, and they were determined to not let it happen again. The fact that we are all together for the last time at that meet has caused it to carry a lot of extra weight and a lot of extra excitement. So in a lot of ways, I think it's appropriate that we get together every spring and celebrate the success, because it really represents the best of what our team is. We are a team that works really hard together. We are a team that does a lot together. We are very much a team, and we are a team that is driven to excellence. And I think this meet more and more every year really represents that. And every year, Mr. Greiner asks me how many years it's been for our team, and I give him the answer. And then we come here and I hear how many years in a row the girls' team has won, and I swear somehow they're pulling away from us. I can't explain that, but I do want to end this by saying congratulations to the girls on their 30-year run, and hopefully someday we can catch up to you. Not that I want you to lose, that's not what I mean by that, but I don't know, we'll figure it out. But anyway, congratulations to all of our athletes here for your championship seasons. And I'd like to introduce you to the boys team that are here today. So I'm just going to go in alphabetical order. First up is Jonas Andronis. Richard Boyd. Michael Burke. Luca Ciccarone. J.G. Martiel. Zachary Duffy. Nicholas G. Martowski. Andrew Heisman. Maxwell Hubbard. Matthew Jensen. Aiden Keeler. Andrew Marcus. Eric Mobsteller. Edison Detter. Cordell Pesty. Ashton Portnoy. Kyle Crow. Logan Wilmuth. And Michael Uke, and Drew Luciani. Save the best for last. Team captain, Zach Dugan, Cornell Weston, please come back. On behalf of Sport One League, the 24th year in a row, I'd like to present to you the American Conference Championship Trophy. Congratulations. And to Coach Shocker, I'd like to present to you this plaque on behalf of the school board and athletic department for your championship season and continued success. We appreciate the hard work and dedication you've given to our boys school diving program. Thank you and congratulations. The next team rounding out our winter season has reclaimed their place back at the top of the American Conference is our girls basketball team. Here to share more with us about their season is head coach Morgan Funstein. Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the school board for inviting us and hosting us tonight, especially Dr. Young, Dr. Rabinowitz. I know Pat Reddick came up and said that Dr. Rabinowitz was their number one fan. He's our number one fan too. We had games an hour away, 2 hours away, 3 hours away, and he was at all. So it does not go unnoticed. I'd like to thank the high school administration, especially Mr. Greiner, Mr. Schultz, and for all their support, attending games, and just being there for us. So coming off of a state championship last year, expectations were high, and the season had the potential to kind of feel like a job. And I thought that the team and the girls did a great job of buying into, hey, this is still a game, this should still be fun. And you know, I guess two of the qualities that I most admire about the girls in our program, number one, their ability to accept criticism and always want to improve. And the second is they're just tough. They're tough. And there's a lot of instances, if you follow our season, as to times where the toughness was tested. I guess the single highlight of a game that is just absolutely incredible was against Abington, who we had beaten in the state quarterfinals the year before, and they had been ranked in the top 2 or 3 in the state all year. We were down 23 points with under 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. This is basketball in high school. There's no shot clock. 23 points in under 7 minutes to go. These girls didn't give up, and it's a big reason why we're here tonight, because we beat Abington. They were our big rival, and they were a team that was out for revenge. So that toughness was no more evident than in that game. We had the balance that our team had was also very special, and it was not always just one player dominating the game, and there were 5 different members of our team that made a whole league, and you know, for that to happen, you have to have great balance, and great balance ends up equaling a great team. So just want to honor those players from the all league. Honorable mention Sarah Eskew, honorable mention Carrie Creepy, second team Jess Poland, first team Dana Palazzo, and first team Jackie Vargas. And Jackie has a long list of accomplishments here, and I'm just going to mention them because I think she deserves it. Second team All-PA from USA Today. First team All-State for the second year in a row from the Sports Writers Association of Pennsylvania. And she was also the only junior to be in the final 10, top 10 for Miss PA basketball. So just incredible year for the entire team, and to have those individual accolades for Jackie was really impressive. And she comes back in 4 years. We're excited about that. But at this time, I'm going to call up all the players in the program, and let's get it going. Gina Sarnoski, Colleen Clammer, Berkeley Marvin, Kylie Elliott, Liz Brenner, Jess Bryan, Jess Bowman, Sarah Eskew, Rachel Bilger, Dana Balazza, Jackie Vargas, Najee Smith, Tess Harper, Karen Greavy, Jackie Morgan, Brianna Felowitz, Jess Sobieski, and Meg Barbera. Please like to ask the team captains, Megan Barbera and Karen Greavy, to please come back up front. On behalf of the ceremony, I would like to present to you the American Conference Championship. Congratulations. And to Coach Watson, I would like to present to you this plaque on behalf of the school board and the athletic department for your championship season. Congratulations. And in addition, I'm not sure how many are aware, but we were just recently notified about a month ago that Coach Watson was selected by the PIAA and named the 2017-18 NFH as Pennsylvania Coach of the Year. That's all I'd like to present to this watch in honor of your outstanding recognition. The next team we are recognizing this evening, the first from the spring season, are girls track and field team. Here to talk more about the performances this season is head coach Matt Dwyer.
First off, thank you, Dr. Young, and the school board, Mr. Schultz, for recognizing us tonight. I think as Jeff and Pat both put it, thank you, Ms. Rasmussen, for all she does. She keeps us all in line as coaches and makes sure we follow the rules and takes care of us along the way as well. Congrats to all the teams tonight, both boys and girls swimming, girls basketball, and boys lacrosse team as well. I'd like to give just a quick recap of our season, but it starts last year. We talked about the 30 years of the team, the 20-something for the boys swim team is really impressive. When I came on here last year, with our first 1 to 20 years, we We said the goal is to catch up. I know Jeff's goal was to catch Pat's team, and our goal is to try to equal the Swift teams. And this year's team had that in mind from the get-go. Last year, people said it was a fluke that it only beat Chuck Andrews. We had a couple really good seniors, and that was it. And this year's team kind of embraced that role right off the bat, that it wasn't a fluke, that we were determined to show that we were just as good as they were. Chuck Andrews was perennial Calvin House top two in the state for the past 10 to 15 years. And we'll be right there again this year. So, week one was our first opponent, Cheltenham. And our girls were excited first week of the season. We win 80-17, a really close meet. And we have to see the next meet. Next 2 days we beat them 95-55. Again, right after that was always a fluke. They had a couple girls sick. That's really the only reason we won. And at that point, our focus became, that was the first week of April, the focus became a month from now. And we had to maintain focus because the rest of our league, to be honest, we just kind of walked right through. And that's hard to keep focus at that point in the season because, again, we went Abington, we beat 113-35, Havro, we beat 117-33, Springfield 135-10, Vermont 131-18, and PW 122-28. Those aren't close meets, right? And it's hard for girls to maintain focus at that point. These girls realized there was still an end goal. Right? The goal was to beat Cheltenham in the league. Just like swimming, you can win the regular season, but you have to win that league meet as well. And going into the league championship, we was going to be close. And it was back and forth all day. It was 18 events in track and field, and the meet takes 2 days. And it was back and forth all day. And ultimately, at the end of the meet, it was 2:14 and 2:02. And we emerged on top. And it really was a total team effort. As Coach Funston alluded to with his girls, with those 5 all-league honors, we had 16 out of 18 events, girls get all-league recognition. That's a total team effort. We scored in every event on the track and in the field. We had 16 out of 18 events, multiple point scorers. It shows the depth and it shows the team atmosphere that we preach every day. And from the beginning of the season, we preach one team. We're not a distance team, we're not a sprint team, we're not a throw team, jumps team, ball team. We are one team. We start every practice together, which is kind of rare for track teams to do. It goes against conventional wisdom. But when you preach team, you have to follow through with that. And these girls buy into that. And they come together as individuals to start the season, but after weeks of collective hard work, dedication, and sacrifice, they become that team that we preach. And they become the UVTF family, as we call it. And this year was awesome. When they announced the team winning its second title in as many years, the pure joy and collective joy that they showed upon winning that was everything a coach wants. You see the culmination of all that hard work and dedication come to fruition. And those days are just great for us as coaches. And I feel privileged to be a part of that success. I would like to say before we bring this team up, good luck to the girls that are continuing on to the state championships this weekend. We still have to put some work in the next couple of days. Friday and Saturday should be, again, a great showing for up and down the track and field. At this point, it's time to recognize our 2019 Suburban 1 American Conference champions. We'll go through the list. We'll start off with Maddie Amoy, Megan Barbera, Abigail Bryer, Kayla Brown, Caitlin Burmester, Abigail Shishu, Ella Clayton, Kendall J. Covet, Mara Yan, Sarah Esper, Jen Gertzlau, Samantha Hayne, Emma Ketchur, Abigail Kelly, Amanda Fulop, Peyton Coleman, Ryan Coleman, Annie Litter, Lillian Lloyd, Madeline Matthew, Abigail Mahaley, Elena O'Toole, Michaela Catalano, Shayna Pearson, Anna Pfeffer, Madeline Ray, Rania Spring, Sophie Sabrina. Madeline Sanders. Guy Scott. Naya Devine Smith. Kaylee Stronger. Gabriella Walden. Paris White. And Mia Wright.
The seniors that are present from the team would please come back up front. On behalf of Spurman League, I'd like to present to you the American Conference Trophy. Congratulations. And Commissioner Hart, I'd like to present to you this plaque on behalf of the school board and the athletic department for your championship season. Congratulations on all your success this season. We wish you the best and saves this weekend. Thank you. The last team rounding out our spring season is also back for a second consecutive year. Is our boys lacrosse team. To share more about the performance this season is head coach Patrick Lakeman.
First, I'd like to thank all the school board members for all their support, the school administrators, the staff that work with the boys on a daily basis. Real quick, if you don't know me, I'm a new face. I teach at Wissahickon Middle School, which is the arch rival of everything red over here. We'll get into that a little bit later. And I'd like to thank all the parents in the community that allows us to perform the way we perform, and that they continue to give us all the unwavering support throughout the year. Congratulations to all the Suburban One Championship teams that are here tonight. And I'm going to use just one term to describe our boys, especially this season. And it is gritty, not the Flyers mascot, but we are embracing that term. If you follow our season at all, we started off very slow. But since one of our very tough games against Parkland, at Parkland over spring break, we've really come together. These boys compete day in and day out in all of the elements. The team continues to impress me and impress others throughout the state. One aspect about this group, and if you know anything about the boys lacrosse community, Wissahickon, where I teach, when they found out that I was coaching over here, they really started to give the jabs. You can imagine I teach 6th grade, so an 11 to 12-year-old boy and girl start trash talking you in front of the class. It starts to bring the rivalry back together. And if you were lucky enough to come to that game, there was easily 200 people on both sides, and it was very electric. And since the Parkland game and the Wissahickon game, we've really started to roll. Onward to tomorrow, where we have a top district playoff game against Adam Grove, with the chance to move on to states. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the boys lacrosse team. Colin Asper, Brody Balassa, Nick Bevilacqua, Scott Byers, Brett Callahan, Giuseppe DiBernardo,
Foster, James Goldstein, Justin Heckler, Colin Higgins, Alex Hildebrand, Sam Hoffman, Nat Hopper, Nadir Johnson, Andrew Kearney, Evan Kepnes, Brian McCary, Isaiah Menn, Seth Miller, Sam Morgenstein, Ross Newman, Lucas Nina Bosler, Colin Osborne, Justin S. Park, Tom Bertucci, Brett Rama, Nolan Reed, Lucas Roselli, Jake Rossman, Jaden Santangelo, Jason Scott, Matt Charkey, Jackson Simmons, Andrew Sowers, Patrick Tucker, Jason Williams, Brandon Warnoff, and Zach Young. And Louis Gamber. I would ask that the seniors from the team that are here tonight please come back up to the podium. On behalf of the Sport League, I'd like to present to you the American Conference Championship Trophy. Congratulations. Coach Lincoln, on behalf of the school board and athletic department, I'd like to present to you this plaque to commemorate the championship season. We appreciate all the voices across this program, and I hope this is the first of many to come. Thank you. Congratulations. In closing, I would like to thank the board of school directors for their continued support of our athletic programs, as well as the overall community. Thank you, and I hope everyone has a great summer.
So, one last congratulations to the young men and women recognized tonight. And again, a very special shout out to all your parents that are here tonight for all the hard work, everything that they put into your success here. We are going to take a short recess, and then we'll be back for our second presentation. So again, congratulations. Okay, we're back. Just for a couple of minutes, a couple of our board members went over to the, I believe it's the Sandy Run Middle School concert. So they wanted to see their children perform, so they should be back in just a few minutes. We still have a quorum. Okay, moving on to our second presentation, which is a budget presentation. Ms. Jones. Right.
Thank you. I haven't been Ms. Jones for a long time. Tonight, there's only 2 more budget presentations to go for 1920. And a lot of the information you're going to hear tonight is a repeat of last Thursday at Finance Committee meeting. You've all seen the slide. It's as of April the 29th, where we started out with our audited uncommitted fund balance of $7.1 million. Our total revenues estimates of almost 101 million, as well as total expenditures of $100,567,000, plus transfers of 2.4 million to leave us ending projected fund balance of $5,138,000, again before the commitments that we've talked about all year. Moving forward, looking at 1920, we start out, of course, with the same number, move forward with revenue for next year, which does include 2.3% increase, the Act 1 percentage for 1920 for Upper Dublin. Total expenditures of $104,737,000, and at that time we were still projecting $2 million of fund transfers to leave $1.4 million at the end of next year. We've had some changes over the past month, and just to remind everyone, particularly those in the audience, revenue makes perfect sense. If you decrease revenue, your fund balance is going to decrease. If you increase fund revenues, fund balance increases. Expenditures has the inverse relationship. If expenditures decrease, your fund balance will ultimately increase. And if you increase expenditures, it has the opposite effect on fund balance. So we tried to combine some of the slides from last week's presentation. Revenue adjustments for the current year, $200,000 plus. Interest rates have even been more favorable for school districts, so we're bringing that amount up to about $750,000. The budget is $500,000. We increased it to $550,000 previously, but are confident that we'll hit $750,000. Now moving to the transfers, fund transfer of $447,225. That's actually on the agenda for this evening for a transfer. And we did that amount was also transferred last year. Other expenditures and changes, about $40,500, 7 different accounts related to regular ed tuition, general supplies, again, several different accounts. So we're now estimating general fund balance to end at about $4.9 million. We have to pull that forward with total adjustments also from 206. If you go back to the previous slide, you'll note that the total adjustments are 206 next to the last line. So moving forward, $206,000 of adjustments for 18-19, and we're going to take a little time to discuss the next 2 adjustments. Also on the agenda tonight, the settlement of the Prudential real estate appeal that we've been working on for quite some period of time. There's 2 motions on the agenda that relate to that stipulation and the successful settlement of, again, the large appeal. Actually, it's over $19.5 million. To give you a little perspective for those of you in the audience, and certainly the school board, we worked for a number of years on something called the Hub. It was a real estate investment trust. It was comprised of 4 parcels that only totaled $17.6 million. So this is a large assessment appeal. The first number of $650,000, which doesn't tie perfectly to what you will see in the stipulation, but pretty darn close when you're working with numbers this large, relates to the permanent change. That relates to the impact of the reduction in assessment. That's a permanent loss of revenue for all years moving forward, unless something changes with the property that permits another reassessment. The second line is a credit, because instead of needing to repay or writing out a check for $1,800,000, the owner has agreed to take this in credits over the next 2 years. So just for clarity's sake, and so next year when you're back here at this time looking at decreases and comparing year to year, that amount will not be on the slide. Now, I said $1,800,000, so you may be asking why does this say $1,165,000? Because that's the balance of the bill after the reduction. So in essence, that whole revenue item for that one particular parcel will be 0 for the year 1920. Moving on to much smaller numbers and more positive numbers, property tax relief is a very small adjustment of $2,076. Interest income, we're simply doing the same thing for next year as what we have done for this year. Don't want to get too optimistic. There might be a slight recession or some downturns with interest rates for next year, so we're not pulling that line any more than $200,000. And the FICA and PSER subsidy will be reduced by $78,540. That's the budgeted number. And that's based on 11 retirements that we'll talk about when we turn the page. So the first line item is the estimate of $521,319 for 7 teachers that are retiring. All of the teachers but one are at the top end of the scale, and then 4 administrators that are also retiring. We have done our best to estimate PSERs, FICA, and all expenditures or benefits related to those changes. Moving on to the next line item, we've talked about health insurance savings. Through the presentations, we started out with the 5.87%, we've moved south to 3.55%, and incredibly, the third look was a blended rate of only 2.6%, far below national trend or even what we've talked about with assumptions and looking at a 5-year projection. Sandy Run Middle School, 2019 GOB debt reduction, kind of a clunky way to describe it, but we had $1 million in that particular line item for as a holder, placeholder for the borrowing that we just did. Due to the timing of the construction, it made the most sense to borrow only $10 million at this point in time, bank qualified debt. So we were now able to add or reduce that expenditure by $634,006 instead of it being $1 million. Capital transfers reduction. We're not transferring as much money as what we had initially budgeted or initially estimated, although we've certainly done plenty of transfers. We're talking about doing plenty of transfers throughout the year. This amount, again, just to be clear, as far as capital transfers, the reduction was initially $2 million. For next year, we're now only budgeting $1.458 million. The amount of money that we've talked about since 15-16 has debt reduction. And there's a small amount of $27,050 that are related to 3 other account areas. So, just a summary, again, moving forward. Last year, we now have a picture as of last Thursday and tonight of 7.1. That's the amount has not changed. Total revenues, total expenditures. Fund transfers has changed because we're assuming tonight that the board will be approving the transfers that are on the agenda, and there are 2. And lastly, with a $4.9 million budget, again, before committed amounts as of June 30th. Moving forward to next year, 1920, going through the same discussions as what we've already had, starting at the $4.9 million, moving forward with $101 million, total expenditures being $103 million, and fund transfers going from that $2 million that was discussed earlier to $1.458 million, landing at $1,699,000, again before the $3 million of commitments. Switching gears to property tax reduction. The amount increased. We were a bit surprised that the amount of property tax allocation from the state did increase, not by a great deal, but nonetheless, it certainly did increase. And the number of approved properties remains strikingly or unusually at the same as last year. We have the assessed values creeping north a little bit as far as the credits for homestead, and most importantly to our taxpayers and to everyone else, the dollar reduction is $353.58 compared to $342 for the current year. One other point, there was a question last week about total dollars available. We have to keep track meticulously every year of amounts that are changed during the year. If there's any properties that are added or come off, and usually they're deducted. So every year we have to
Calculate and keep track of any excess amounts expenditure from the state that we didn't give out. And so this year, the actual state distribution increased by a whopping $647 related to last year's calculation. So, current real estate increase, tax increase as of 5/20. These figures have been changed just a little bit because we've taken those in prudential settlement into consideration. It's based on an assessment of $2,238,890,890,000. And the amounts are shown for 2.3%. That's how much additional revenue we will receive. 2.19. The amounts 2.09 and 1.99. With the sliding scale as you go down, a reduction in revenue to the school district of $230,000, and the impact on the average assessment of $195,000. And again, I want to point out that this only reflects the prudential, the permanent piece of prudential assessment. We can't put the tax credits in there, comparability and compromise. And while we continue to have discussions about where we will land on June 24th as far as the final tax increase, $230,000 may not sound like a lot of money, but when we have construction projects, when it's started and ongoing, as well as what we need to do with some elementary buildings, $230,000 in the current scenario would fund approximately $4 million of debt service. That number does change based on economic factors. Where are we now? State budget. State budget. There has been some information that those amounts might increase, but they're relatively minor for Upperville. Our aid ratio is quite low. Our enrollment is quite steady, so not a lot of change. Federal budget, last week we learned that Title I is being reduced by $19,099. Now, what I want you to stop and talk about there, we haven't factored that in. There needs to be one more reduction, but we're anticipating some other changes in Title II, Title III, and Title IV that are waiting to be finalized, and information to come to Dr. Minor and then secondarily to the business office. If you were to look at everything, 1819 estimated, as well as 1920 budget. For the current year's budget, we've budgeted $245,000. That's the best information we had last year at this time. However, we had already dropped our estimate to $206,772, and now this tells us that our new allocation that again we just learned up late last week, $180,901. So there'll be some other minor adjustments, but all total, remember, title funds are about less than $500,000.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Burke. At this point, we'll take questions from the board. Again, this very, very similar presentation was presented at our finance committee meeting, and we had some significant discussion at that time regarding this presentation. If there's any other comments or questions, this is the time for the board. Okay, seeing none, we are now up to community input. It's an opportunity for community input for action items and presentation items included on tonight's agenda only. There'll be a second community input at the end of the legislative meeting. He was ready to return to his seat. Ms. Bright, do we have any announcements or communications tonight?
Not this evening, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have some minutes to approve.
Yes, we do. Minutes from April 29th legislative meetings as well as the community meetings during the month of April 26th.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the minutes listed in this agenda? Who's that?
Good.
Is good. Made motion and seconded by Dr. Ludwig. Okay, listen. The court cannot see, so we need to make sure we know who's making the motions and the seconds. Comments or questions regarding the minutes tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, moving on to Education Committee curriculum recommendations, Dr. Ludwig.
One information item and 3 motions that have been discussed at the Education Committee meeting, except for the conference. There's just an adjustment of a previous conference. I would like to move that we accept them all.
Okay, motion is made. Is there a second? Okay, Mr. Sherman. Okay, these are the 3 items under Education curriculum recommendations. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Moving on to technology recommendations. Dr. Ludwig.
3 motions in this category also, and they've been discussed at the Education Committee meeting. I move that we accept them all.
Motion made, second. Dr. Kim, comments or questions on the technology recommendations tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? People Services, Dr. Kim. Go. No, just with the microphone.
I move that we move items A through H forward. They have different service agreements as well as some other agreements with folks in regards to the education and people services.
Okay, seconded by Dr. Ludwig. Comments or questions on any of the items on the People Services recommendations? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, operations, Mr. Silverado.
Thank you. We have 2 items tonight. Item A is our usual excess out-of-state non-repairable equipment. Contains, it looks like the team has been hard at work cleaning out Sandy Run. And then the joint services agreement with Springfield Township that was discussed at the operations committee meeting. I move that we approve both.
Okay, motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Rothman. Okay, comments or questions on the 2 items on the operations tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Finance Committee recommendations. It's good.
Yes, thank you very much. All of these items were discussed at our Finance Committee meeting, so I'd like to make a motion that we approve items A through J.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Francis, second. Okay, comments or questions? These, all the items tonight under finance. Seeing no comments or questions, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Moving to personnel recommendations, Ms. Francis.
Before Mrs. Francis goes through with the motions or recommendations, there is a motion or a series of motions tonight to rename our curriculum coordinators as supervisors. This is a title change only, there's no additional compensation. The title coordinator does not accurately represent what they do on a daily basis, so I'm asking the board to consider title changes for these folks.
Thank you, Dr. Yanni. We have 3 items under the personnel report. I'd like to make a motion, actually I need to make a motion, but I also need to make a correction. So before we do that, to item C, there is so much paper. under the leaves of absence, there is an accidental omission under Ms. Jessica Jones, teacher at Upper Dublin High School. Should list that as a medical sabbatical for 1 year. With that correction,
With that correction, I just required that we open it up for community input on that one correction. If there's anybody that wants to address that one correction. Okay, thank you very much. Close community input.
thank you, Dr. Minowitz. Now we have our 3 items for personnel, including this month's usual personnel report. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Okay, on the personnel of 3 items, is there a motion made? Is there a second? Good. This is good. Thank you. Thank you. I don't like this room. I can't see anyone. Okay, we have first and a second. Any comments or questions on the personnel report recommendations tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Moving on to policy.
We have second readings and adoption of policies 320, 321, 322. We also have an approval of Administrative Regulation 322. We have repeated first readings of 123 and 130, as we're still working on those administrative regulations. We also have first readings of policy 360 and 338. We have first reading repeals as listed in the agenda number. And we also, the policy committee did make changes, non-substantive changes, so those don't need to be approved for 301 and 702.
Motion made by Ms. Rothman, seconded by Mrs. Sirota. Comments or questions on the policy recommendations tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, there is nothing under other business. Move on to liaison committee reports. Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, Dr. Ludwig.
Intermediate unit meeting is on the 4th Wednesday of the month, and they had a meeting in April. They'll have a meeting in May that I can't attend, but they will have a meeting in June, and then they're off for the month of July.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ludwig. Moving on to Ms. Rothman for Montgomery County Legislative Committee.
There was a virtual meeting last Wednesday night. I was unable to attend, but I could review the notes from that meeting. One of the big discussion items was a House bill that was passed by the Pennsylvania House back a couple weeks ago on May 7th, which is an expansion of the EITC of $100 million. This is a program that increases tax credits to businesses and thus diverts funding away from public education. This is a bill that has been, I don't know if I say fought, but lobbied against by public education advocates. However, it has moved on to the Senate. We'll have another meeting in June.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rothman. Eastern Center for Arts and Technology will have its awards night next week. Just the original enrollment numbers for Eastern right now is the highest that it's been at least 5 to 10 years. We're getting close to 600 students in the building. Many of the programs are full. We are looking at in the future how we can deal with when programs are full, such as our allied health, what we can do to open up some slots and get some aids into those programs. But we're very excited about the numbers at Eastern. And another piece of information is Dr. Plesnowski, our new executive director, would like to visit the board sometime in the fall and talk about Eastern. I thought that would be a great opportunity for us to hear about some of the great things going on at Eastern Center for Arts and Technology. Dr. Kim, Excellence and Equity.
Yes, the Equity and Excellence Steering Consortium met on May 8th to discuss plans for next year. They're excited to see all the committees coming back, as well as newly back, the Hispanic and Latino students and families who are forming. The Gender Equity Group would still solicit more volunteers if anyone is interested. And they're also waiting for Ms. Ashley Kitten to come, who apparently is pretty excited about the work around equity that we're doing within our district. Secondly, they're also pretty excited in regards to something they created funding stream to Dr. Yanni. This is initiated not only for the equity work, but also for UDEF. And then lastly, we want to encourage everyone to support the Tricentennial Fall Fest on November 3rd this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Teacher?
All right.
Yes.
On Wednesday, June 5th, there will be an annual meeting and presentation of the EAC to the board. There are 4 reports that will be presented, and there will be some discussion about those reports.
Okay, under the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, next month the board will need to select 2 individuals to serve as the voting delegates, and I cannot be a voting delegate since I am coordinating the platform meeting that day. So next month we need to make sure we do them 7s. PTO, PTA, Ms. Francis.
It's an incredibly busy time of the year for our PTO and PTA parents and our state volunteer leaders. There have been many, many good events, spring fairs all around. So thank you to our volunteers, first off. Secondly, this Thursday, May 23rd at 5 p.m. in the barn boardroom, we're going to be meeting with our leadership from those organizations to also thank them in person, but discuss plans for next year.
Thank you, Ms. Rensick. Township, Mr. Rofsky.
Testing. We did not meet. Our next meeting is July 17th at 8:30.
Thank you. Rutherford Education Foundation, Ms. Good.
Yes, there's nothing new really up and coming, except for that there's a meeting next Tuesday.
Okay. Solicitors report.
Great, thank you. The only announcement I have this evening is that the board met an executive session prior to tonight's meeting from 5:45 to 7 o'clock p.m. to discuss matters of personnel and matters involving litigation, involving assessment of those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Moving on to our second community input. Please come up to the podium, state your name, where you reside in the township, and the 4-minute rule is in effect.
Anita Bristol, Fort Washington. So I feel I was the space out or something, because I don't understand. You did the finance all together as a group, which basically means everyone, for now, is supporting a tax increase of 2.30%. Is that correct? You can answer questions. I'm just ramble on for 3 more minutes. The finance, was there a commitment made at the finance committee meeting? Right now it says in here in the proposed budget for next year, it includes the 2.30%. I thought there would at least be some discussion. And there was no discussion. And on top of that, probably shouldn't speak for you, Art, but you certainly have been on record as saying you would like to see the tax increases to keep trending lower. So last year was 1.99. What 2.30, so that's higher than 1.99. So I didn't know you were going to go on record, or you just going to wait till June. I realize the budget doesn't have to be finalized at the end of June. Is that it? I think it's odd. It's odd to be a legislative meeting and have no.
We answer questions after all community input.
Yeah, it's very odd. I've been to a lot more of these over the years. It's pretty odd to have zero discussion on the tax increase, but in the presentation there were 4 options. Odd is being polite.
Okay, Mr. Swan, if anybody else is trying to give community input, appreciate it if you can step up and closer to the podium.
Some members of the board, Dr. Yanni, Bill Swan, and Glenside. A quick question. Is subject, verb, agreement still being taught at the school? requirement, does it get graded? It was just something that came to my mind. Related to technology, particularly with seniors that are graduating, they have any papers, projects, or something like that they want to save, if they could be taught as an option, an alternative to download a free copy of portable apps onto a flash drive, copy all their Google stuff to that, they get to keep it. Otherwise, they create their own a Google account. All that's happened is that Google's been paid in advance to delay receipt of the information, which they wind up getting anyway. And then something else I was wondering, for a whole school year, rather than just for lessons, just for an educational topic or classroom discussion, something like that, would a poster-sized picture of Jesus on permanent display be permitted? Permitted for the sense of giving a feeling, ambience to the classroom, or perhaps one of the crucifixion, would that be allowed? Would one of perhaps the hand of God be permitted full-time all year round to give a feeling, an aura to the classroom? Where pictures of living, we're dead, religious leaders, perhaps like the Pope or one of the chief rabbis of Jerusalem, be permitted all year round in a classroom, not for particular educational purpose, but just to give them to set an environment, for an ambience, to give a feeling, to set a tone for a classroom. I was curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swan. Seeing no one else will close community input, we'll start with Dr. Yanni.
Thank you. At last week's Finance Committee meeting, there was some discussion around the proposed tax increase, what that should be, what that could be, what that will be. Ms. Bray did ask for some direction. We still have some work to do on portions of the budget. After I'm done answering questions, if any board member wants to expound on that, that's fine. The question about subject-verb agreement in grammar, we are just about done developing or redeveloping a scope and sequence for English language arts, which includes grammar components. And so that will be up online soon. As for whether pictures of Jesus or pictures of other religious leaders would be on display in classrooms just for ambiance, not for a teaching purpose, the answer to that is typically no. If through study any of those folks are referred to, then pictures and other artifacts would be shown. But as a general rule in a public school, no, those items are not on display.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yanni. I think that addressed all the questions.
There was one more about seniors taking artifacts, electronic artifacts with them.
So our seniors will receive instruction about how to keep any files that they want to save after graduation. So that will be part of the instruction for seniors.
Okay, any comments from the board? Mr. Sorrell.
At the Finance Committee meeting, I am already on record saying my number for the tax increase right now is 2.07%. And that's based on 90% of the index. And my intention, and as Ms. Good pointed out at the meeting, it can only be an intention at this point. We can't make any commitments, which is the intention for years has been to try to reduce the magnitude of the increase each year. My personal intention would be to ride at a certain percentage of the index every year for the next several years, at most but not all of the index. So the number I'm throwing out right now is 90%, which is 2.07% for this year.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Ms. Francis?
I think the general takeaway from the Finance Committee meeting, to summarize, was that all 4 options are still being assessed and discussed, and that we made no final decision, and that will be a further discussion at a future Finance meeting.
That's correct. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Just, do you have anything else? We're up to final comments from the Board of Superintendents. Anybody have any final comments? Yanni, anything?
I just want to acknowledge that we do have our new CFO in the audience tonight, Andrew Leckman. I want to welcome him. He'll be starting officially July 1st. At our next board meeting, which isn't until the end of June, our new Chief Academic Officer, David Hoffman, will be with us. He replaces Ava Morrison. And our new Director of HR will be with us, Ms. Ashley Kitten. She will have some transition time with Mr. Sigafus to make sure that there's no gaps in service to our staff.
Okay, just to draw your attention to our next policy committee meeting. It's June 10th. Our education committee is June 12th. Operations and finance is June 20th, where will be significant discussion regarding the budget. And then the final approval of the final budget would occur on June 24th. Graduation is less than, will be, before we know it, less than 3 weeks away. So we're looking forward to that special event. So, may I have a motion to adjourn? Dr. Kim, second? Okay. Well, those